This is a video interview with Miya Johnson, who's a longtime Subud member, helper in the Los Angeles area.
Yes, yes.
So Miya, can you start by telling us a little bit, what was your life like before you found and came into Subud?
Well, I just arrived in Victoria, British Columbia. I used to live in Toronto, and then I moved to Victoria, and I got into making and designing lampshades because I had a boyfriend who was a bookbinder, and he showed me how to make them. And we imported this fabric from England called Liberty. And I was just starting to make lampshades. Oh, and I bought a house with him, and I was about 25. But then I saw another side to this man and didn't really like it. Anyways, so I decided to leave him. And coincidentally, this woman from an island called Salt Spring, it's one of the Gulf Islands in Canada. She told me she lived on Salt Spring. She painted on fabric, which I was interested in. And she said, you must come and visit. So I just felt I had to go and live on this island, which was kind of unusual. So I moved to this island and I didn't know anybody. And I rented a really big house, really cheap rent, very lucky, beautiful house. And this man that I'd broken up with, he actually came over on Halloween as a surprise visit, and he drove my car. You could start it without the keys. And we had an accident and went into a ditch, a 12-foot ditch in Ganges on this island. And I had to go to hospital, this local hospital. And this doctor said, oh, you've broken your pelvis and you won't be able to walk for a while. And I thought, what? I was supposed to go to these huge craft fairs in Toronto, making these lampshades, selling them. And 2 months later, I was supposed to go to Toronto, and I couldn't believe it. He said, you can't go. So I went home, and he said, I can't go back at home until I find somebody to sort of look after me, to buy groceries. So the picture of the accident was on the front page of the local newspaper on Salt Spring. And this lady came to visit me and she said, I didn't know her. I didn't know anybody. And she said, my daughter will look after you. She'll get the groceries. She was like 16. So great. So then I I got better. It was an easy break. I got better after months. So anyhow, I went to Toronto, came back, and then I decided to sign up for classes in Vancouver for painting on fabric. And the teacher was Rahana Lang. Do you know Rahana Lang?
Yes.
Yeah. So once a week, I would go to Vancouver, which is like a 3-hour ferry ride with Rahana, because coincidentally, she just moved to Salt Spring. She was living in a trailer. They were going to build a house, her and her husband. And she would explain Subud to me. And I was interested in Tibetan Buddhism. I was searching for something, and then I was kind of intrigued by, Subud, of course. And then she would explain what it was about, and then she said, "Well, Roland Graham, the doctor who saw you at the hospital, is in Subud, and he lives just 2 minutes away from me in this lane above this house I lived at." And so I got interested in Subud, and then I went for the, probationary period, and I got opened in a creepy little cabin on Roland Graham's land. Have you heard of Roland Graham before?
No, I haven't.
Roland Graham was a real pioneer of Subud in Vancouver. They lived in Vancouver. They had 11 children, Roland Graham and Maria. And he was a part-time doctor. on Salt Spring and a writer, and he'd recently moved to Salt Spring. And then Rahana lived in Vancouver. And because Roland Graham was there, I think that was the attraction. There was somebody in Subud. And she came to this island. Anyhow, I got opened. But like a lot of people, I felt like I should be in a bigger group. So I moved to Victoria. I moved back to Victoria and did Ladihan there. So it was a nice coincidence. I met Roland Graham through this car accident, and then I became friends with Rahana.
So how was the Ladihan for you when you're open?
When I got opened, I think I was sleeping. No, it wasn't a magical experience. No, I don't think so. I think I was frightened to get opened because I'd heard these strange sounds from this cabin, because that's where they did Ladihan, this on Roland Graham's property. He had a huge log cabin, but he had this little cabin. And so I'd heard these sounds, and there was only 2 helpers in the group. That's all it was. So I was a bit apprehensive, to tell you the truth. But I knew I had to do it. And so no, it wasn't a huge thing for the first time, no. That came later. But I had to do it. I was drawn to it. And then I wanted to go to a bigger group, and I did that. I moved to Victoria, then I moved to Vancouver, and then eventually LA.
So was there at a time when you felt you had a Ladihan that kind of convinced you of the reality of it, or something to the effect?
I had some interesting experiences. Yeah, I could say it saved my life a couple of times. One time I went to Cabo San Lucas with this boyfriend who was a sculptor, and his eyes started to get really red, and we thought it was conjunctivitis. And for some reason, I just kept thinking I have to leave him. And, I was quite happy on Cabo San Lucas, but I just felt I had to leave him and go back to Victoria. So I told him I was leaving. And then I went to the mainland in Mexico, and then I made my way back to Victoria. Then I got a phone call from him, and he said he had very bad hepatitis, and that I would have to get the shot, the gamma globulin shot, because I'd been with him, and there was a chance I could have it, but I didn't. And so I was lucky. So I think it saved my life. I left him. But I didn't know he had hepatitis. I thought he just had red eyes. But apparently he turned yellow. He had to get somebody to drive his van back. And so I think it saved my life there. And then another time, well, while I was in Mexico on Cabo San Lucas, I played with this little girl. I met the mother and this little girl, and they were sailing around the world. And I thought nothing of it. She was an amazing little girl. And I took pictures of her. And then I went to Victoria, and I ended up living in this shared house on the water, this lovely big house. And one of the persons was this man called Seem Terpstra, and he had a picture of that little girl in his bedroom. And I said, "Well, who's that?" And he said, "She's my daughter." And she was like half Japanese, so she didn't look like him because he was Dutch. So that was another coincidence. So I've had a lot of, coincidences, whatever they were. Does that make sense? I just met this little girl, and then this man. Anyhow, he was very supportive. I mean, this man, Sim Terpstra, was great. For 4 years, I lived in this shared house platonically, and this man was very supportive of me going to Subud. I was like a brother to him. He wasn't in Subud. He was a philosopher, didn't want to get opened, but he was very supportive of me going to Ladihan. And I lived 4 years in that house. It was very good. I learned to make bread and tofu, and
And this house was where?
it was on the water in Esquimalt in Victoria.
Ah,
And I
okay.
went to the Victoria group on a bicycle. I had a bicycle then, not a car. And it was a nice group, but I wanted to go bigger, a bigger group.
Mhm.
And I went to the Vancouver World's Fair. Do you ever remember that? Did you? They had this amazing World's Fair. People from around the world performed musical instruments, crafts, whatever.
Yeah.
So I moved to Vancouver for that, and I was part of the Vancouver group for about a year and a half, and that was nice. So I met, a lot of people that you probably know too,
Yeah.
and that was a bigger experience, bigger Ladihan, bigger social groups. It was great.
So how did you end up in the Los Angeles area?
Well, I think that was another Subud thing. I did move from Vancouver to Toronto, back to Toronto, as part of the group there. And then there was this little congress in Grand Rapids, and I went with two male helpers. I forgot the names. One of them had organized this big congress for BAPIC. And anyway, we went to this congress, little congress, and I just felt comfortable with Americans. And I was studying marketing and PR. And I just felt they were like that. They were like really into marketing and PR. There's, the go getters, Americans. You know,
Mhm.
Canadians are wonderful, but I just got this feeling that I felt really good with Americans.
Hmm.
And I tested with the helpers, and they said, yeah, it would be good for you to move to, America. And and then one of them said I'd be pregnant, which I totally couldn't believe because I was 39 at the time without a boyfriend. Um, but then I decided to move, and I wrote to Ibo Rahayu, and all I said was, could it be New York or LA? That they're the only cities I thought, I would like. Well, I prayed it was New York anyhow. I always wanted to move to California as a young girl. So yeah, it was California, LA, and then I became involved in the Subud group in LA, and I've been here ever since, like 32 years,
Wow.
and I love it. We're very lucky. It's a lovely facility, great people, and big group.
So did that prediction ever happen?
Oh yes, it did. Oh, so this is what happened. Yes, so that I moved into oh God, he's an English person. He wrote a book, Elliot something. Anyhow, he was moving, so I got his apartment, and it all worked fine. Um, and then I went sort of out with this Subud man a little bit. I was really helping him. I had to work under the table, even though I had all these great connections. I used to do PR for a man who wrote this bestseller, and he's French Canadian, called Absent Fathers, Lost Sons. So I thought he'd want to come to LA to promote it because I promoted him in Toronto. And then he said no. And then all the connections I had in Canada and LA, um, I needed a green card. I thought I could get away with it by just having connections. No, nobody would touch me. So I had to work under the table, which was a horrible experience. I had to work for cash. And this Subud man was um, bolting foundations to the house. It sort of helps in earthquakes, to have your house bolted. So I helped him with that. And anyhow, we met somebody, this woman, at this gym, and she said, "Oh, you must come to this Christmas party. It's a British pub, and it's." I said, "Well, I don't go to pubs. So I'm not really interested." But this Subud man said, "Oh, let's go to this English party at this pub." So I went to this pub, And then somebody was interested in getting the house bolted. They wanted to see the flyers, the information. So then that Subud man had to go to his van to get the information. So then here am I sitting on a bar stool at this pub, feeling a bit uncomfortable. And but I met this man, and I did like him. I mean, yeah, I was, I guess, attracted to him. And so anyhow, he said, "Can I have your phone number?" And then my brother-in-law, he had lived in America, but he was Canadian. He said, never give anybody, he said he worked in TV. And then my brother-in-law told me that if anybody says they work in TV, they're phony. I don't know why he said that. It was crazy. But so when he said he worked in TV, I said, no, I won't give you my phone number, but I'll take yours. And I was doing Ramadan at the time, or maybe a few weeks later, I was doing Ramadan. And I didn't want to call him up, or I didn't think about it. And then 4 months later, I still had the number in my wallet, and I rang him up. And but he wasn't there. He was in Chicago helping his mother move into a condominium. And then we got back, and then we had a long date. And anyhow, we started going out together, actually. And so what has that got to do with the? Oh, so and then we got married. I got pregnant and I was 40. I was kind of old, and I got married, and I'm still married to him. He's not in Subud. He knows everything about Subud. We got a house on testing, so he goes along with it. But I guess he's just not. He doesn't want to join anything. He's more like a philosopher type. So it was good in a way having a husband not in Seward, because then I had a babysitter, because I had another child too. And I had a daughter when I was nearly 43. So it did come true. I did get pregnant, and I had two children. And yeah. And I would go to many congresses too, like, Australia. And
California Congresses, or
well, I loved the world. I loved my favorite one, but I wasn't married then. Was I went to the Australian one. I think I was like 28, and I went with. Do you know the Thomases in Canada? Michael Thomas
yes,
from Montreal. Well, I knew his daughters really well, like Ruth and Virginia, and we shared a room together. And anyway, we had a great time in. And then I went to Indonesia for the first time. That was amazing. And then I went to the New Zealand one. That was a great one too. So yeah, his husband always encouraged me to go to these congresses, and I did.
that's great.
It was amazing. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that the when you did that testing and they said you would be pregnant at the
Yeah, I thought that
age
was
of
crazy.
39, that was kind of an
It,
interesting thing.
yeah, because a year later I was actually, and it wasn't hard to get pregnant. I mean, I wasn't. But another woman in Subud, Elna, got pregnant at the same time. We had our children at the same time. You know, Elna Cook?
Yes.
Yeah. So she had the same thing. She met Michael, and she got pregnant. And so I had somebody to go through that. She became a good friend. And yeah, and he was a great man. I mean, he's a great man. My husband, but he didn't come into Subud. And at the beginning, I didn't really care about it. And it still doesn't matter, really. Well, it would be nice if he did, I guess, socially, but he's very, supportive, so that's good. Otherwise, I wouldn't be with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you had any other experiences in Subud that are
Let's see. I'm sort of a blank right now. You mean you mean well, I had this thing when I lived in Victoria. I once saw this very bright light in the sky and I had to get off my bicycle. And then I was exhausted. And I literally almost crawled back to this house. And it's kind of a strange experience, I think, a Subud thing. And then I went to the Australian Congress, and then I met people who had had a similar experience, this bright light in the sky. Have you heard of that before? No,
No.
no, it's just this very bright light and very powerful. And I just, it was very hard to go home. And I think it was a Subud thing. And then as I say, I went to Australia, and a few people had had a similar experience. So
So how did you feel when this
it
hit
was
your
sort of
life?
weak, um, just sort of weak, but in awe, and then it wore off. That's all.
Hmm.
I think that's the most. I've just had a few experiences where I had to leave, and there was no reason to leave, and that it's saved me a few times. I've had that. That's been the most noticeable, you know.
Feel like you were guided somehow?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the American thing, the American Congress at Grand Rapids, just a feeling I had to. I'm one of those movers, although I've stopped it. I've stopped moving since coming to LA, and I'm very settled, and I don't want to be anymore right now. Actually, I've lived in the same house for 25 years and been in LA for 32, and I've had a very settled life. But before I got married, it was quite different. I wanted to see different groups,
Yeah.
experience different things. So I've changed a bit. Um, but I go to Europe nearly every year, and then I visit Sibi groups there, and that's fun. I'm not doing that. In fact, I'm going this year. There's a little center in Perth, Perth, Scotland. I don't know whether you've heard about it. Have you heard
No.
about the center in Perth? Well, it's in beautiful grounds, and I think it's going to be an international center. It's I actually haven't been before. I was going to visit, but I was dealing with my mother's stuff at her house, so I didn't go. But I'm going this year, and yeah, I visit. If I go to France, I visit groups, and um, yeah, I love it. I like going to Europe and visiting groups. It's fun.
So do you think you'll go to the next World Congress in
Oh,
Portugal?
absolutely, absolutely. Because I didn't go to the last one. I didn't go to the one in Indonesia, but I tested on it and it wasn't right for me to go. And I was really surprised. I even thought, should I have tested? I should have just gone, but I didn't go. And then I heard a few people got sick. Did you go to that one?
I actually tested myself and
Oh,
received not to go to it.
oh, right. Well, I was so disappointed because I love Indonesia. Um, I just love the culture, never mind Subud stuff. And yeah, I didn't go. So I just let go of that. But I definitely will go to Portugal. Yes, absolutely. Can't wait. Yeah.
So how do you rate Subud in terms of your life? How how has it affected your life over the years?
Well, I think sometimes it hasn't been easy, the purification thing. Like I didn't work when I had children. I didn't work. Um, and I often wondered, well, I did work. I did work a little bit. I did catering and I did these lampshades, but I didn't have a career because I decided I was an older mother and I'd done a lot of stuff. So it was good to focus on the children. and I had to drive them all over. They went to schools that were far away, and one of them did acting, so I drove him to all the auditions. Um, but I didn't work. I mean, I kind of, well, I can't regret it, but I think that was a Subud thing. I didn't work, and my husband didn't mind. He worked long hours, so. But now I've started evening classes in oil painting and pottery. Um, and I think I've always been creative, but I've had fears. But I think it's opening up for me. You know, have you been through that before in Subud? It's closed, and then all of a sudden, doors open and things happen, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
so now it's a good time. Now I can hopefully my mother's 96. Hopefully I'll live a long time and invent another career. I think I'm getting a second chance to do something. And I want to volunteer in South America to in super groups. I want to do that now. My kids are flown the nest, and I'm used to not seeing them so much. At first, it was painful. You know, I missed them a lot when Leona went to college. But anyway, hopefully, I will. I want to go to South America and go to Colombia and maybe volunteer or Portugal somewhere. Yeah, I feel
So
like doing that.
how old are your kids now?
Well, son turned 31, daughter 28, and they know a lot about Subud, and they know kids whose mothers are in Subud, but they're not in Subud either. Whether or not they will, you know, I don't know.
Yeah,
But they've had an easy life. I mean, easier than me. I mean, their careers. I think they've had the Subud life, and you know, the way you would want it. Their work. One's an animator and has done extremely well at that. Um, and directed the son. And my daughter, her work is set design of these music videos, and she's done directing too. And work seems to come easy for them, you know, interesting work, and they have a
yeah,
lot of connections, and things seem to come easy for them.
yeah,
They didn't necessarily come for me, and not work wise, and yeah, not career. But for them, it was very easy. It all I mean, maybe they'll have problems later on, but I'm happy for that.
yeah.
And I think they are living, I don't know, I feel a very, oh, the other coincidence was this house that I'm in. Um, all of a sudden I had to move. We rented for 5 years because my husband didn't know which area to live in LA. And then all of a sudden the landlord said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm selling the house to my son. I'm giving it to my son. And my husband had to have knee replacement surgery like a month, 6 weeks later. And we went, what? We have to move? So I was told to look at this area called Northridge because the schools were good. And it never worked out. And then one time we got a windshield, a golf ball hit our windshield going up to Northridge. And I just said to my husband, forget Northridge. It's not meant to be. It never works out there. So I was told North Hollywood would be a good place. Well, it's not necessarily a great area in North Hollywood, and I didn't want to live in North Hollywood. But I went to visit this friend, and she had a garage sale for her parents. And then I looked at this house for sale, but it was for sale by owner. You know, they were selling it, which is kind of unusual. No real estate agent. And I knocked on the door and they said, oh, sorry, it's Saturday. We can't see you because they were Jewish, they were Orthodox. I went, okay, I'll come on Sunday then. And it was the time, this has probably happened in Seattle, but before the house was even on the market, that it would get sold. You've had that in Seattle, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It was crazy time to buy a house. but we knew if we didn't do it, we're going to miss out, you know. And so this house was okay, actually. It wasn't bad, and it was very near Hollywood. And my husband had to get up very early, and he needed to work in Hollywood, and it was a very short commute. And we bought it, and it was really easy, and it was a great price. And then when we moved in, this little boy came with some cookies to the door, and he said, "Oh, I'm your neighbor." And he said, "Are you Jewish?" And I said, "No, I'm not Jewish." Oh, and I think we got the house because my grandmother was Jewish and she was Orthodox, but I didn't find this out till I was like really old because she ran off with a Scottish Presbyterian, and she didn't look like, you know, she had blue eyes and blonde hair, so she could pass, you know, this is in England. So my grandmother was brought up in a strict Jewish household. And so I told the people who were Jewish that, and I think that's why we got the house actually. Anyways, this little boy said, "You're not Jewish, are you?" And I said, "No, no." I said, "I do this sort of thing called Subud and I do the Ladihan." And he was with his dad. And his dad said, "Oh, my wife knows everybody in Subud." And she wasn't in Subud herself. Her name was Liz Cruz, but she went out with Mordia Gleason. Do you know the Gleasons?
Yeah, yeah,
She went out with the oldest son that died. Um, and she knew all of the children of you know, like Henrietta Music and Patricia Arquette, and she knew everybody, all those kids. I mean, who are now adults. And I thought that was a coincidence because, you know, there's not that many, you know, people in Seward. LA is a huge place. And she became a great friend, and our kids became very good friends with her kids, still to this day. So I thought that was nice, wasn't it? You know?
yeah, yeah,
So I guess that was another Seward thing.
yeah. Fortuitous.
Yes. Yeah. So I think I've been lucky that way, like lucky that I didn't have to work, really. But on the other hand, I, I would like a career. I would like something meaningful, you know, and maybe volunteering is the way I'll go. I think. Yeah.
Well, I don't have any more questions, but if you have anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I know I've rambled on a lot, but I'm from Northern England originally,
Uh,
and then I moved to London, and I should explain that I never heard of Subud in England at all. And when I moved to Vancouver, and then they said, "Well, you know, Subud is big," because it used to be really big in England, not so much now. It's not. The groups are much smaller, and they don't own their properties so much, which is sad. Um, but anyhow, I had to find it on this little island, you know. Are you familiar with Salt Spring? Because you live in Seattle. Do you know Salt Spring Island?
Chilstrom?
Salt Spring Island. Do you know, have you been to,
Oh, no, I don't know that one.
but you know the American islands, the San Juan Islands, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, these islands, Salt Spring is the biggest island. It's quite big. Um, a lot of famous artists and that. Anyhow, so I found Subud on this island, which is, you know, kind of neat. It's great. You know. I don't think I've got anything else. I think that's all. Um, it's had a profound effect on my life. I mean, I couldn't do without the Ladihana. Always feels so good after the Ladihan.
Yeah.
And the LA group's really good. Um, we have a nice, you know, it's nice facilities, and so I'm quite happy actually. I think it must be hard to go to a. I've often thought maybe I should move to Northern California, but there's smaller groups really, you know. But who knows? I could move. But LA is kind of easy to live. The climate's quite nice. Yeah. So I'm here right now.
Well, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for thinking of me. I never would have dreamt you would have called. So that was a surprise. But I'm doing it because suppose my kids want to come into Subud some time, they can hear, they can see me and see how I came into Subud.
Yeah.
Because they are very supportive too. It's just they don't want to seem to make the commitment, but maybe sometime they will. That would be nice.
Thanks again. I'm going to stop the video.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for thinking of me. I don't know why you did this, but because we don't know each other, do we? I mean,
No.
I have been to Seattle, but I have been to the group, but a long time ago. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot.